Welcome back.
To the Legal Lounge podcast, where you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink it.
That's so dumb. Well, we're trying something new. Well, I'm your host, Corinza. Here we have Cody, our co-host for Legal Lounge, and then we have our special guest today, Miss Haley Knighton. She's our defense attorney here at the law office of Brian Fagan. We had her on the podcast before. What has it been, like 2 months? 2 months, maybe. It's been a while. If you have not checked it out, check the description, and then also click here. We'll link the part 1, part 2. So there are 2 parts. When we talked to her about her journey, about her becoming a lawyer, we asked some questions. We talked about what is it? Death penalty? What's that word? Oh my god, I can't think of the word right now.
It was
execution style, or
no, it was the death penalty. It was like
right?
whether or not people should be. Was it the school shooting? No, what was it? The death.
Anyway, watch it. But it was really good. We went into a really good conversation with Haley. So welcome back again.
Thank you.
So just in case if you have not watched a part 1, part 2, but you still want to keep on watching this one, could you give us a little bit of introduction as to who you are? What do you practice? Obviously criminal law, but
My name's Haley Knighton. I'm an associate attorney here at the law office Brian Fagan. I practice criminal defense and family law. Been doing criminal defense for 17 years. Well, criminal law for 17 years. Five of that I was a prosecutor. So,
dang, I always thought you were a prosecutor a lot longer than defense attorney.
Yeah.
Oh. How was that transition like from prosecutor into defense?
It's different. It's not a big transition.
Yeah.
But
did you ever think about going back to become a prosecutor or no?
Some.
Really? What makes you, I guess, is there certain instances that would happen in the case that you make it feel like you're better suited, or maybe you enjoy the prosecution side better?
I enjoy defense work more.
Okay.
Prosecution side, you felt where I was at, it was kind of like you weren't really able to make your own choice. You had to do what the office wanted. So
Yeah.
Every time you say that, I think of Suits. Have you ever seen that
Yes.
show? Suits. Every time I think that, because Harvey Specter he started in prosecution, I think, too. She's like the Harvey Specter of the law office, Brian Fagan.
What, and then switch to defense attorney?
Have you ever seen Suits?
No.
Stop asking. I'm just kidding. No, what was the question?
Because you said
I was thinking of my
was a prosecutor, but then you made it seem like
because he started off as a prosecutor in the DA's office, I think, something like that, and then he turned into was it corporate? Is that corporate law, or is that?
Oh, it's not even doing criminal at all.
It has stuff to do with he's a defense attorney also, but he defends big companies and lawsuits and stuff like that. So it's a pretty good show up until the last 2 seasons probably. I never saw the last season. I'm still on the one before that, but I stopped watching it. It's pretty good until then, though.
Interesting. Well, for today's episode, instead of talking about your life and how is it like being an attorney, we wanted to bring in 3 highly publicized cases to discuss and dissect those cases. We Cody and I, we often do that when we talked about Murdoch case recently. What do we do the last one?
The Menendez.
Oh yeah, we did the Menendez trial. That's still ongoing, which I think it's still interesting. But we picked Casey Anthony, and we're gonna also discuss the Aaron Hernandez case, and then Chris Watts case. So all 3 were highly publicized, talked about, made documentaries.
I'm sure most people know about the last 2, the Hernandez and the.
I think most people would know that Casey Anthony.
Really?
I think so.
Because I didn't know about the Casey Anthony one.
Really?
I knew about the Aaron Hernandez and the Chris, whatever.
I mean, Casey Anthony was, I guess, late 2000, right?
I was born. I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah, the trial took place in 2011. So, I mean, 2011, it seemed a lot further back than that. I didn't realize. But anyway, so we're going to discuss about it. I wanted to ask questions in terms of, just kind of comparing it to how we would live in it day-to-day basis, and just kind of ask you questions about it. What are your opinions on how the case, the way it went and how it was portrayed? Casey Anthony, for those of you who don't know, she was a mother of a 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee Anthony. They're residing in Florida, and Kaylee was last seen on June 16 of 2008, but her grandmother, Cindy Anthony, reported her missing to the authorities on July 15 after Casey, which again is the mother, could not provide her whereabouts and made a series of vague claims about her daughter's location, who was then 22. The mom was 22 at the time, and she initially told investigators that a nanny named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez had kidnapped Kaylee, but this person was later found to be fictitious. So that's
the first lie.
Right.
She didn't get, I don't know if you already mentioned that, if she didn't get, okay.
Well, I mean, everybody knows she was not found guilty
of the murder, but she was found guilty on 4 counts of lying to the police or something like that.
Is that criminal?
Mm-hmm.
It is?
Yeah.
That is, okay.
She lied about evidence or something like that.
So Kaylee remains were discovered in 2008 in a wooded area near the Anthony family home, wrapped in a blanket inside of a trash bag, and showed evidence of duct tape. Casey was charged with first-degree murder and faced the death penalty. The prosecution argued that Casey has suffocated Kaylee using chloroform and duct tape, likely because she saw her daughter as a hindrance of her lifestyle. They cited Casey's pattern of partying and lying as signs of neglect. The defense, led by Jose Baez, argued that Kaylee had accidentally drowned in a family pool and that Casey's father, George Anthony, helped cover up the death to avoid criminal charges, further asserting that Casey's strange behavior stemmed from alleged abuse by her father, a claim both George and Cindy denied. The lack of direct physical evidence linking Casey to Kaylee's death and the reasonable doubt surrounding the cause of death complicated the prosecution's case. After a highly publicized 6-week trial on July 5, 2011, Casey was acquitted of first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter, and aggravated child abuse, but was convicted on 4 counts of providing false information to law enforcement. This verdict outraged many who believed Casey was guilty, and public interest in the case persisted due to questions around the justice system, forensic evidence, and media influence. So do you have a little bit of knowledge on the legal side of how you think it went down, or how did you feel were you an attorney then?
Yes.
How did you feel as an attorney when this was?
You remember that case?
I do. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just hearing about it, not inside the courtroom, I feel she's probably guilty.
Yeah.
But
I do too.
I don't think the prosecution was able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she killed her.
Mm-hmm.
I think they threw, I guess the defense threw a lot of false allegations out, what they claim were true, but I mean, never been evidence that her dad, abused her when she was little. There was no evidence that she drowned in the pool.
Oh, there wasn't?
No.
Oh, I didn't know that. I always thought they did found that she...
So why did they say that she drowned in the pool then? If she wouldn't... Because surely if you drown in the pool, there's evidence of like bloating and stuff like that of the body, and what happens, and probably the autopsy would show that if that was the case, then she would have it inside, in her lungs and stuff.
So I can't remember when the body was found. I think it was a while.
It was later.
After,
it wasn't right away.
So
yeah.
There was a lot of decomposition and everything. I don't think they could point to an exact cause of death.
I wonder
I believe
why.
they listed it as homicide, but they couldn't point to like blunt force trauma or was she strangled or.
That's weird.
So it wasn't until almost 6 months later when Kaylee's remains. So they first reported missing on June 16th. And then it wasn't until December 11th when her remains were discovered near the home.
I wonder if that's why it's like was such a popular case, because it's like, why couldn't they pinpoint a cause of death? Like, did they not do enough? Did they not do enough tests?
I think it just had been so long. They were pretty sure, the state was, that it was homicide. But they just didn't have the actual physical evidence to prove it.
Until 6 months later.
Well, then they had the body, but then you have the defense coming in and saying, well, it was an accidental death. But then we just covered it up because nobody wanted to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But I remember there were pictures that came out of Casey partying, real close after. I don't remember if it was after her daughter was reported missing or it was after they found the body. It was, her behavior was just...
It was. I remember, going, the grocery store, they got a bunch of magazines, People magazines. It was always about, Casey Anthony doing this, Casey Anthony doing this. So I remember seeing it that way as a kid, and then me researching on my own. And I believe, there were some, evidence of her looking up chloroform on the website, right? And then they still deemed it as not guilty. So, and then also too, it looks like they even found forensic evidence suggesting human decomposition in her car.
Yes. So and I don't remember, I didn't watch every day of the trial, but I don't remember if they went much into that in the trial. I know it came up, but I don't remember if they had experts to discuss it. And
That's crazy. So think about decomposition. Maybe now things have changed with technology and, advanced science and stuff like that. But maybe even back then, is it too late to really find the cause? Or is there a mishandle of evidence at
It
that
depends on, of course, the forensic stuff they have. But it also depends on how long a body's been out there. I know she was in a trash bag. And then, so it's a little different than a body just laying on the ground.
Yeah.
But, if months and years go by, then you're not going to have anything but bones. So it's hard to prove certain things unless there was a really big blunt force trauma that caused kind of a...
Yeah, because that remains on your bones.
Yeah.
So the drowning with your lungs and stuff that you're talking about, that's probably not going to be as...
I honestly didn't even think about if humans decompose that quickly. I never even thought.
How long does it take? Do you know?
I don't know.
She's like, it takes approximately.
What? I'm just trying to think. Does it? I would think.
I think they start decomposing pretty quickly.
Dang.
But I don't know how long, the full process to where then there's just bones. I don't know how long that takes.
So, as the defense side, what would you have done in if you were in the court and if you were defending Casey Anthony, or even as a prosecutor? How would you have conducted this trial?
When I was a prosecutor, you prosecute cases all the time that don't have direct evidence. You have a lot of circumstantial evidence, and if you can walk the jury through a timeline, and then you can, of course, adding in her behaviors and the signs of decomposition in her trunk, you can try to lay out a timeline to show the jury that there's really no other reasonable person than her. As a defense attorney, I don't tend to throw out false allegations against other people. You combat the evidence in the actual case. It's the way I do it.
You're talking about the allegation about the abuse?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what all, conversations went on between her and her attorney, how they arrived at that. But I know I didn't personally like that. I thought it was, let's just throw everything and see what sticks. And, it worked, but...
At that point, in your mind, would you have taken Casey into, maybe get a lesser charge or even a lesser sentence, that route, because of, certain things that happened and popped up that, to me, she looks guilty.
Seems like they went for a Hail Mary.
Yeah, they did.
So
I think the defense's side was pretty much all or nothing. Either they can prove murder or they can't, which is a lot of times the way you go if there's not a lot of strong physical evidence. You don't want to go in and say, or, you could find them guilty of manslaughter or something. You want to go in with, they didn't do it.
Did they ever found the actual like chloroform substance like anywhere in the house?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't think they did, but I don't remember.
Yeah. I mean, to me, she's still coming out, in the media.
She's marrying some dad with 2 children.
Really?
I think so.
What would have been her motive, I wonder? Like why, if she did it?
Freaking do what she was doing where they found her.
Because I think she got pregnant really young, I believe.
She did.
19, right?
Yeah, she was.
I think she was even younger than that. I don't know. I can't remember.
I thought she was 19 or something.
Maybe. Well, maybe. I lost the train of my thought now. What was I going to say?
Your thoughts, just put it back on the tracks, on the railroads.
Oh, because I was going to say, because it was so, like highly publicized. Like, how do you handle that as a defense attorney? And I don't know if you've ever been involved in cases where it was out in the media that people did talk about. How do you feel as an attorney knowing the jury may have that information or could be swayed by the public to make that decision?
So I personally haven't handled very high profile cases. I think it makes it difficult as a defense attorney of, especially picking a jury, because most, in high profile cases, they've already heard about it. And you can change venues, go to a different county, but I mean, the news isn't just countywide. So I think it makes it more difficult when it's high profile.
It's probably like another strategy, like another approach too, because if they've already heard about it, they've already possibly gathered their own opinion about it.
Correct.
And if you have to go into it with that way of like understanding what you're about to walk into, then you have to figure out a way to kind of bring them away from wherever their opinion's at right now and formulate a new one.
Right.
Can you complain to the court and be like, hey, I don't think this is being done the right way because of how much, attention it's getting?
I mean, you can, and that's why you put in to change venues. But, I mean, in reality, nowadays, with the internet and you get the news, and if it's very high profile, it doesn't matter where you go.
Right.
They're going to have heard about it. So there's really not an unbiased jury anymore if it's a high profile case or even, a local case that made the news.
So if the suspect or the person that's being put on trial can appeal, can prosecutors go in and be like, hey, I want to appeal this conviction because I don't think it was, you can't do that?
So if it comes back not guilty, the state can't appeal the not guilty.
Really? Isn't that unfair? How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I don't understand it.
So you're talking about, you don't understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, if you were charged with a murder and you were found guilty, you can file the appeal saying, hey, I didn't do this. I want to appeal my conviction. So I asked Haley, what about other way around? What if you were found not guilty, but state was like, no. This wasn't done right. I want to appeal it to make sure he gets locked up because we do believe that you did the crime. But Haley's saying you can't file that. Isn't that unfair? I feel like if the person has the ability to do it, why can't the state?
Because people are found guilty all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if I think it's unfair.
Innocent people.
I mean, they have to prove the guilt, and if usually it's 12 people, misdemeanors at 6 in Texas, but if they don't think they proved it, then I don't think they should get another bite at the apple.
Yeah.
I mean, they do if there's a hung jury and it's not an outright acquittal, then they can try the case again.
Right. And that was my next question, too, because we were talking about the Menendez case, and it was a hung jury the first time. So that decision is only made by the jury.
Right.
Right? Not the judge or anybody else.
Well, the jury and the hung jury part, the judge ends up declaring a mistrial because the jurors can't agree. You have to have all 12 agree. If they can't agree, then it's a hung jury. But the state gets to choose to retry or not retry.
How long did jury have the time to do it? I know sometimes the deliberation can take days, but
reminds me of,
is there a cutoff?
There's not really a cutoff. I mean, I know a judge won't declare a mistrial after one day. They make them go back, but...
There's an old movie. I forget, was it 12 Angry Men or something like that? 12. It's like a super old trial movie or something, and it's this guy trying to prove the innocence of somebody or something like that, and it talks about the railroad, the train that passes by. What is it called? Does anybody know?
I think it's 12 Angry Men.
Is that what it is?
Because it's just really more about the jury than...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what that reminded me of. I just wanted to say that.
I've never heard of it. Is it a good movie?
It's a pretty popular film, I think. Especially in criminal law. I think they show you that in like criminal classes too, like school.
I don't remember.
But I think that's where I watched. I don't remember, but it's about this guy going against a jury, and they basically all think that the boy is guilty. I think it was like a stabbing of like a knife. He had like a pocket knife, but the knife you can get at any like convenience store within a 2-mile radius of the location. Like it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's a classic, I think.
I mean, like it.
It's about a guy that...
You won't like it if you can't even finish the freaking Zodiac documentary. What makes you think you're gonna watch a black and white movie from the 90s
I
or
like
80s?
classics. But go ahead, Mario.
Is it about just the one guy? That every other juror is saying yes, he did it, but he's the only one that says like
Yes.
No, I don't know if he did it. I'm not saying he did it, but I don't know if he did it. And then he at the okay, I'm gonna spoil it.
No.
I mean,
I'm
it
gonna spoil
happened
it.
so long
Because
ago.
you
I
haven't
remember the
finished
ending.
Zodiac, but at the end he convinces everyone.
Oh,
It was
really?
like
the
11
one
to
guy
1.
that was like, okay.
Yeah, it's
huh.
like one at a time. He starts changing their minds.
Do you know if that has ever happened in any of your cases? Like something crazy?
I'm sure it has.
You don't find out?
No. So once the trial's over, the attorneys are allowed to talk to the jury if the jury wants to talk. But the jurors don't have to. So a lot of times they duck out and leave. They don't want to talk.
I mean, I wouldn't want to either because what if they're out to get me because I put somebody in
Have you ever
jail?
had an instance where the jury did want to talk?
We had a case recently. The guy was found not guilty and the juror wanted to talk. The jurors did. So we went back and, of course, the prosecutor, they're asking, what could they have done better to prove their case? And the jurors were like, we just didn't believe them.
Believe the
It was an assault case. So the victim and there was a witness
mm.
present, but they just didn't believe them. And then the cops didn't show up to testify.
Aw.
So
That's always better, right? Like if they don't show up, especially was it a trial or it was just a hearing?
It was a trial.
and the police didn't show up. Dang.
I don't
Can-
think they do very often.
usually they do. I always, when I prosecuted, had the officers there.
Hmm.
And then
No, they have
most-
to be there, don't they?
They don't have to. If we usually subpoena them on the defense side, I don't subpoena the officers because I don't want them to show up.
Mm-hmm.
But because then you can argue, well, they don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they do show up. I think this one, the prosecutor said that they had sent the subpoena, but they were at training and they didn't think they needed them, so they just went forward with the case.
Can you stop? Like, can they ask to reset because the officer didn't show up?
Before a jury is picked, yes.
Okay.
They can ask for continuance. After the jury's picked, no.
Oh, so they just have to go for it. Mm.
It's making me want to watch Suits again.
I have a question for you, Haley.
Okay.
So I've seen a lot of videos that say like how to get out of a speeding ticket 101. And the first thing they say is just accept it, don't say anything, get the ticket, but then you go to court for it. And they say 99% of the time, cop doesn't show
Right.
up.
Correct.
And for the 1% of the time that the cop shows up, you just got to say, when did you last calibrate the laser gun?
What?
I don't try traffic cases. I haven't done a traffic case in years.
But would that
But
work?
the most of the time they don't show up. The cops don't show up to traffic court. Now you have some that do. DPS usually does because they're just different.
What's
have nothing better to
DPS?
do.
The Department of Public
Safety.
Safety, the state troopers,
Ah,
they usually show up.
Of course they do.
They take their job seriously.
They just sit behind the
They must make
billboards.
commission on those. Huh?
But is that possible though? Do you get it dismissed? How do you get it dismissed?
If they don't show up to trial, then they can't prove a traffic ticket.
Right.
Because the only one that was there was you and the officer.
Mm-hmm.
So you just go to court
So
and be like, I wasn't speeding.
Right.
Yeah.
And then nobody's to
And
tell you
then,
otherwise.
if they use the radar gun, they have to calibrate it. And you're like, well, where did you clock me at? When did you last calibrate it? And if they don't have an answer...
What if they do have an answer? They're like,
Some
I did
do.
it,
I
I
mean,
did it yesterday.
Some officers are really trained. And they care a lot about their
But
traffic
that's
cases.
probably why they show up too, though.
Yeah.
You know, because they know they're going to get hit with that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you don't show up, you're not going to be prepared anyway, so they don't care. So that's why they don't show up, you know?
They're smart.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Dang, I could have got out of that ticket. Like 3 years ago. Nah, that guy would have showed up. I know he would have showed up. He freaking yelling at me and flash me. Sir, you know why I stopped you? I was like, dude, why are you yelling?
So the next one I want to talk about is the Aaron Hernandez trial, which you know this one?
Yeah.
Do you know a little bit? Which involved the NFL star Aaron Hernandez, who played as a tight end for the New England Patriots, and his involvement in multiple criminal cases, most notably the 2013 murder of Odin Lloyd. Lloyd was a semi-professional football player, and the boyfriend of Hernandez's fiance's sister was found dead with multiple gunshot wounds in the industrial park near Hernandez's home in Massachusetts. Obviously
What's his relation again? You said his
So it's a boyfriend of... Okay, so Aaron's fiance had a sister, which the boyfriend is Odin.
Ah, okay.
Okay. All right. So obviously, he was well known. He was arrested in 2013, and the New England Patriots, released him from the team immediately after his arrest. He was later charged with first-degree murder, which carries a mandatory life sentence in Massachusetts, as well as other firearms-related charges. The trial began in 2015 with Hernandez's defense team arguing that he was innocent and had been unfairly portrayed by the media. The defense claimed that there was insufficient evidence to prove he pulled the trigger, suggesting that Hernandez's two associates who were with him that night might have been responsible. However, the prosecution argued that Hernandez had motive, opportunity, and means to commit the murder, portraying him as a controlling and paranoid individual who feared betrayal. So some of the trial included the DNA evidence. Hernandez's DNA was found on a blunt cigarette near the crime scene, placing him there at the time of the murder. Surveillance and cell phone records, these placed Hernandez and Lloyd together on the night of the murder, painting a timeline that made Hernandez the last person to see Lloyd alive. There were some witness testimonies. Multiple witnesses testified regarding Hernandez's behavior, suggesting that he might have been concerned about loyalty and betrayal. The defense countered by questioning the reliability of certain forensic evidence by arguing that there was no clear motive of Hernandez to kill Lloyd, given their close relationship. And of course, he actually did get... So this one's different from Casey Anthony. He did get convicted. He was found guilty. Although the part that I want to focus on with this one is the abatement doctrine. That's applied in Massachusetts law. The principle of abatement ab initio, I guess it's Latin, means that
Latin.
No, you don't. Means that a defendant's conviction can be erased if they die before their appeal is decided. Since Hernandez died before the appeals process and his murder conviction had been fully resolved, his conviction for the murder of Odin Lloyd was vacated by Massachusetts in court in 2017. So he committed suicide after he was found guilty, and then this whole abatement law was, I guess, notified? I don't know. So then it basically erased everything that this even ever happened. So from my understanding, his family that were left behind got a hold of his estate. I think they're pretty well off, money-wise.
I think so.
So, so my question to you, Haley, this whole abatement thing, is there something similar in Texas too?
So I don't think there is. I was actually looking into that earlier because I wasn't sure. I knew about the Hernandez case.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there was a Supreme Court case that put this abatement law into play, but then each state gets to decide whether or not they want to apply it. So I don't think Texas has one. Because, I mean, appeals processes can go on forever.
Yeah. And so that was my question, too. Like, how many times can you appeal it before they're
Well,
like,
you
okay, you're
have
too much?
Your original appeal that has to be filed 30 days within the 30 days after the conviction. And then if that one say that they uphold it, the Court of Appeals, then you can go up to the Court of Criminal Appeals, and that can take years. And then you also have the writs that people can file that they usually do when they're sitting in prison. They're just file them anyways. And then the court gets to decide if they want to hear those or not. So it can take years before the whole process is finalized, the appellate process.
Yeah. And you said it's a different court, right? It's not
Yes.
hold in criminal court.
Right. So you have the criminal courts and the trial courts that each county has. And then the Court of Appeals is a different court. And then you have the Court of Criminal Appeals.
Is there a jury, too?
No.
No.
So the only juries happen at the trial court. They don't happen in the appellate process. It's just the judges. And there's 9 judges. They don't all have to hear the appeal, but there's 9 judges.
So they're the one that decide
Yes.
whether, okay, so let me understand it again. So if the appeal was approved or whatever, and they go for it, do they try again?
They can. So it depends. They can either overturn the whole case or they can overturn the sentence. Because in Texas, we do punishment separate. So if they overturn the guilt part, then the whole trial happens again.
But that's decided by the judge,
Yes.
whether or not, if
By
they
those
want to
judges.
overturn the conviction.
And a lot of times they don't do oral arguments. So usually you just file a brief and they decide looking at all the evidence. If they thought there was enough evidence there for a conviction.
How do you feel about that? Do you think that's the right process in the justice system?
Sometimes, you have 9 people deciding, but you have 12 at a jury trial. So
Yeah.
the judges are supposed to have knowledge of the law, and a lot of them do. So, I mean, and it's, has to be a pretty high standard to overturn the case. A lot of times people say, well, there was just no evidence. Well, if the state's presented any sort of evidence, through testimony or actual physical evidence, then they can go and say, well, that was evidence for the jury to convict.
So they might just go ahead and deny it and be like,
Right.
that's too late.
It's crazy. You said that they found like the phone evidence or whatever, something that location tracked them in the same vicinity. It's crazy because then I remember one of the podcasts that we did recently, we talked about like cold cases. Right? Do you think that had to do with the technology of like phones and stuff too?
Oh, for sure. But I think you mentioned it on our last podcast that sometimes even those cell towers, it's not like as accurate.
Correct. Because
No.
sometimes that just depends on where the nearest cell tower is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
No,
mean
I'm
that
like-
that was your exact location.
Right.
When Find My iPhone, it shows you like on your phone, like sometimes it'll show a big one, but sometimes it'll be precise.
Right.
I'm talking about like precise location tracking and stuff. It's crazy how these little
Has like
square
advance in
phones.
technology helped you in your defense at all?
It can help, and then it can hurt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It kind of goes both ways.
Yeah. Especially with phones. That is interesting. Yeah. With the location type stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What about the surveillance cameras? It's not a law, right? Like not every street has cameras,
Correct.
right? Is it by state or is that just a US law?
I don't know. I know in Texas it's not a law.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like, homes can have surveillance cameras and businesses, but they're not all required to. So not all streets have them.
To me, Haley, it's a little bit interesting that the appellate courts are judges, right? Doesn't that seem a little bit, because it's by the people for the people, right? The justice that it has to be served, and if they grab a judge, you grab someone who is part of an institution, right? It's not necessarily the people, right? What do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, a jury trial is not a jury of your peers.
What do you mean by
sound
that?
bad, but usually jurors are the people that can't get out of jury duty, or they're so gung-ho about being on a jury, so then you're wondering, why do they want to be on a jury? Because most trials are not like they are on TV. I mean, they are kind of boring.
Yeah.
Because you have to go through all the elements and prove certain things. So really, it's not a jury or your peers either. I mean, you got to look at the demographics too. You can go in and you can challenge a jury array if there's only white people in the jury. You can challenge it as a Batson challenge, but most of the time you're not going to have 12 African Americans or 12 Chinese or 12, it's a lot of times there's more white people on juries.
I can see that.
Sounds bad, but there are. A lot of times they're older, sometimes they're younger, but so they're not really a jury of your peers. If you go in as a 20-year-old and your jury's 60 and 70, they're not your peers. And they're going to judge you based on how they were raised and their life experiences.
Could that be a reason for a mistrial? Like, could you make that argument?
It depends.
Because that happened with OJ, kind of, right?
Kind of.
I think it was 10 African-American people, and then it was one lady, I think. Something like that.
Right. So with criminal trials, they're a little different. They're called strikes. You can get rid of 10 people for whatever reason you want to. Of course, it can't be because of race or religion, but you can look at someone not like the clothes they're wearing, and so you kick them off your jury. And then you have other challenges to get rid of people that can't follow the law. So you can challenge the jury, say that in that the 60 people that come in for the jury to get picked for the jury, you pick out of, then 5 of them are African American. And they're all in the back. So then you can do a shuffle to move them up closer. But you have to, if you challenge it, you have to be able to show that they were struck because of their race or because of their religion. If they have any other reason, then you're not going to win your challenge.
Wait, what do you mean by shuffle?
Like so the clerks, that's the way it works in criminal trials, the clerks seat the jury, and it's random. Well, if you look at it and you're like, well, all the African Americans or all the women are all in the back. Usually it's the people closer to the front that get put on the jury because you take the first 12 that aren't struck. So then you can be like, I want to shuffle. So then the clerks have to go back and reshuffle the list. And it really pisses them off. But
it's like literally a card game.
It is.
It's like, guess who?
That's funny.
Yes.
Guess who?
Yeah.
I've done it a couple times. Pissed the clerks off, but that's okay. You take them cookies or something later. They'll be fine.
Huh. Interesting. So, and then, I mean, that is true with the whole judges. And then, what she's saying is right. It's not really your peers either. And then I get it. Like, if I've never gone to jury duty.
I gotten requested once, and they just canceled it. And they're like, yeah, well, got canceled. You don't have to go anymore. It's funny because Peyton, somebody else here on the marketing team, she went once, and she had to go, I think.
She did go.
She went, and then she got it again like 2 weeks later or something.
But it's like a different one. It's like a federal. Like she got like a different letter. So I don't know. She's like all confused. She's like, I think I'm on call. I don't know what this means.
No, on call.
It's like, because I guess they told her to be on the lookout after 6 p.m. on Friday to see the reporting schedule. I was like, so I think that means on call. I was like, you may want to call somebody and just ask questions. But like I had a history teacher in high school, and he would purposely say something crazy, outlandish, so he can get out of jury duty. So people do that, you know.
Do what?
Well,
he was blatantly open about his political beliefs just to say that, and they're like, oh, okay, you can go home.
You hear a lot of it. I mean, you do have those that are like, I can never put somebody in jail. Like, well, they're accused of murder. I can put them in jail. Or, before they changed the murder statute in Texas, now you can't get probation for first-degree murder. Used to, you could. And so that was a big one. A lot of people, I'm not giving you probation for killing somebody. So then you could get rid of them. I personally have gone twice for jury duty. I didn't get picked.
Did you want it to be picked?
I did.
Because, like, as an attorney, that's not like a conflict of interest? Like,
No.
It's not?
I know once it was when I was prosecuting. The second time I was doing defense work, and I walked in, and they were like, and the first time I didn't say anything. I didn't answer any questions. I was like, maybe I'll get on. And of course, they got rid of me.
Dang.
I kind of want to be in it just to see.
I think I would too, but I kind of don't at the same time.
Yeah. So Peyton was even telling me too that when she went the first time, she wasn't aware that the suspect, or who, I don't even know what to call it, was actually there during jury selection. Is that normal? That happens every time? So, and then they weren't told specific details of the case.
You can't go into details about the case. You can just speak generally about their views.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense, because if you tell everything, then you can already make your mind up before they present their evidence and stuff like that.
chose.
Did she?
What do you think she said?
I don't know. Well, that one, I don't know how the second one is really. I don't know if it's really. I have no idea, and I don't think she knows either.
But she went to the first one.
She did.
Which means she had to have answered the questions correctly to get picked, right?
But we don't know.
Or is it random? The first 12 you said?
Yeah. So the state has their strikes. Like in a felony case, they can get rid of 10 people for whatever reason. So can the defense. And then you have the other challenges if they can't follow the law. So it really depends. But what we tell people, what I do, the best way to get on the jury is not to say anything. So the people that just sit there usually are the ones that make it on, because the ones that talk, you're like, well, I don't like you. Or if you really like them, the other side's going to get rid of them.
What happens if you get there late?
Depends on the judge.
What happens if you get there early?
Nothing. You can always be early.
That's what she gets for showing up on time all the time.
She is on time. She probably was early too. She was like 30 minutes early.
45. The only one sitting there. like you.
And she's, well dressed. She's a pretty girl, so she looks probably presentable and just looks like a perfect jury. And she probably didn't say anything. I bet she didn't say anything. That's so funny. Okay, so the third case that I want to talk about, this was a couple of years ago. This was more recent. The Chris Watts case. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
I watched that body cam footage.
This one makes me mad. Like, how do you do that? So, for those of you that are not familiar, he was involved in the murder of Shannon Watts, which was his wife. She was pregnant at the time, actually, and her and their two younger daughters, Bella and Celeste, in Colorado. Chris Watts, Shannon's husband, initially reported his family missing on August 13, 2018, appearing on local news, pleading for their safe return and cooperating with law enforcement. However, inconsistencies in his story and subsequent investigation quickly raised suspicions. As the investigation progressed, authorities discovered that Chris was having an affair with a coworker. Police also found that he had been financially struggling and that the family was under pressure due to financial difficulties. After failing a polygraph test, Chris eventually confessed to the murders, but initially claimed that he killed Shannon in a fit of rage after she had strangled their daughters, quote unquote. However, it was later revealed that Chris had killed Shannon by strangulation at their home after an argument in the early hours of August 13. He then drove her body along with his two daughters to an oil work site where he worked. There, he smothered his daughters and disposed of their bodies in oil tanks, burying Shannon in a shallow grave nearby. Chris Watts was arrested and eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts of first-degree murder, tampering with deceased human body, and unlawful termination of pregnancy. In exchange for his plea, prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty, a decision supported by Shannon's family. On November 19, 2018, Chris was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. So that's what's happened in that case. What is your opinion on?
I think he did it.
He for sure. Yeah.
Which is, why he confessed, because there was evidence.
Yeah.
You know,
Did you watch like
I
some
did.
of the news, him going out there, and do you think that ultimately hurt him?
yeah.
Do you think that was
I
him
think-
thinking it was going to save him?
Even his interviews, his body language was
Mhm.
just very kind of closed off, standoffish. Wasn't,
Mhm.
he was over the top on
You
some
can
ways
see it in
too.
the body cam footage too. Like the police officers knew that something was weird, but they couldn't pinpoint it.
Right.
So is it normal for the law enforcement to wait so long to deem him as a suspect, or how does that work? Like, what's the turnaround?
So I don't remember if they thought he was a person of interest right away.
I don't think so.
Mm-mm. Was this the one where he had the garage footage
Yes.
of him loading
Yes.
into the truck or whatever at like 5 a.m. or something?
Mm-hmm.
But he normally goes to work at like 6. It was like an hour. It was off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just depends on kind of how it goes. Usually the spouse is the first suspect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's normally how it goes. But it just depends.
And I think they did initially question him,
Mhm.
right? Right? And it just didn't think that he was a suspect at the time until, I guess the body cam footage? Well, I think mostly the neighbor.
Well, the body cam footage was when they first showed up to the call. That's the
Right.
one that I'm referring to. When they first walk into the door and it's by the TV and the stand or whatever, and he's almost emotionless. And I don't remember if he was like crying in that footage, but he seemed worried, but there was like no tears. Something like that. So it was wild.
How early on? Well, I guess maybe you can't, because I was like, well, how early on do like non-law enforcement people get involved in the case, like prosecutors and stuff like that? I guess they wouldn't.
So they don't until, usually it's the police investigate and then bring a case to the district attorney's office. And then they get involved at that point when it turns into a court case.
Right.
But just the investigation usually just is the police,
Right.
of course, and then the public.
Right.
So they usually do their own investigations.
Because it's like, why did it take so long for them to like just put 2 and 2 together? You know, And to me,
I think he
looks
played all of
guilty.
his cards right, but his body language and his story is what got him caught up. And once they caught on to that, they started to see the pattern in his lies and his body language, and then that's whenever they said, I think we need to make him one of the prime suspects.
But from my understanding, like polygraph, for example, it's not admissible in court.
Right.
So why do they still use it?
Law enforcement, I think, just as another tool.
It's like to
get them
show
nervous?
doubt.
Right.
Yeah, to make them be like, oh, if I failed the polygraph, now I'm scared. If I'm scared because this polygraph seems like hard evidence, even though it's not admissible by court.
It's like leverage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can use it in the investigation. You just can't use it in a courtroom.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they do polygraphs.
You can catch them on a lie.
Do you believe polygraph? Do you think it's real?
And I think you can beat them.
Yeah. Because it's all based on your heart rate.
Well,
Maybe-
you gotta think if you're a psychopath
Yeah.
and you're just kind of
Whatever.
like, no.
Maybe for one of the podcast episodes, we could bring a polygraph test.
You
And we
can
can try
you
it.
buy that? You can't just buy
No,
that. Can you?
you know that guy that shows up on every YouTube video? He's like this older guy, and he's like, true. Not true.
That'll be Mario.
Yeah, but like we could have that guy come on to ours. We just reach out to him.
Yeah. Because I always wonder that. I was like, well, that's so stupid. Why would they bring a polygraph if it's not going to be admissible by court? Like, it's a waste of time.
It's a tool.
Because I don't believe it either. Because I think you can beat it too. I think
I
as
don't
long
think
as you
beat
can.
it.
I don't think so either.
I don't think I could
beat
either.
I
Yeah.
feel like I could beat it. No, really.
Is that why it's inadmissible on court?
Yeah.
Because they're sociopaths that you're gonna tell them you're
Well,
gonna.
that and there's just, I don't know if it's really a science that can be backed.
Yeah.
I
Because
want to try one so bad.
Because it's not like a neurological test or anything like that, you know. It's literally based on your heart rate, right? And your reaction to your questions and if it raised or not raised. So they're like, oh, yeah, that's true or false. But it's just, all they're reading is like your pulse. That's all it is, you know. Maybe we can do that because, you know, on watches, it tracks your heart rate. So maybe we can do that.
Not through a watch. I
Like,
want to get one of the
oh,
real
it went
people.
up.
Get one of the real people in there. We just get our own. They have some that you can probably order on Amazon. You hook it up to
Oh
us.
my
We get one
God.
for the chest, like the thing that wraps around your chest.
Yeah.
And
And
we
Haley
give them.
can interrogate us. Maybe,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
Can,
For
what's
a
that
crime
called?
that we did.
Cross-examination. Right?
Yes.
You know what crime I'd book you for? Being so confident throwing stuff into the trash next to your desk and completely missing and not even knowing.
You're so crazy.
The amount of times I see you do that. You think that you get it inside the trash can and you just completely miss. I don't even say anything either half the time.
You just see it happening.
And I'm like, does he know? Or does he not care?
So going back to the case so again, this one's different from the last two, right? Because he actually took the plea deal. Do you often give that option to your clients?
Normally, I'd say 99% of the time, they make a plea offer. The state does. And
Mhm.
so you have a duty to disclose that offer to the client, depending on the case and the evidence, it's whether or not you tell them that you think it's a good offer or it's something they should take.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have those that they just want to go to trial,
Yeah.
even if they're on video. But
Yeah, that's true. Because at the end of the day, it is their choice.
He got rid of himself, right?
What do you mean?
He got rid of. Oh no, I was
No.
thinking about the
no, he's still
Hernandez
Yeah.
one.
He's still there.
He's still there.
Yep, he's still locked up. Mm-hmm. He took
Mm.
he took the plea deal. So
Now, real quick for the Anthony Hernandez one, I don't want to go back. That's his name, right?
Mhm.
Anthony
Aaron.
Hernandez. Yeah, Aaron.
yeah, oh yeah.
Hernandez.
Mhm.
He got rid of himself.
Mhm.
Yes.
Do you think that was a tactic from do you think the lawyer would have suggested hey,
Mhm.
look, you could get booked for this, you won't have any money for your estate, or there's this law that if something happens to you, do you think that somebody would suggest
I
that?
think someone told him.
Yeah. See, I think
Wow.
so
Because I think that
too.
was, I mean,
Would you ever suggest that?
no, if you kill yourself. No.
Yeah.
But I think somebody probably did, or he looked it up. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember if he
crazy.
was
I think
real
somebody
smart or
did.
'Cause
not.
I
But
forgot to ask that question. I really want to
yeah, I
ask
think
that
someone
question.
did because he did care about his family. I mean, that
Right.
was,
Right.
he may not care about many other people, but,
Right.
that was his main thing.
I think somebody did tell him.
Yeah.
Even
That's
if it was
wild.
an attorney or not an attorney. Even with the plea deal, do they already come back with the offer? Hey, they already told you that you're only gonna be sentenced for this amount.
Right. So that's what
They'll
the plea
say
deal
that?
is.
Oh.
Say if the punishment range is 2 to 20, then they can say, well, we'll offer you 10 years. And
Not
then,
by the judge, or
no, it's the prosecutor that makes the offer.
Oops.
And then the judge can choose to accept it or not.
Oh, but they wouldn't know that until they actually accept a plea deal.
Well, they know what the state is offering because
Mm-hmm.
usually you go up and the prosecutor says, okay, I'll give your client 5 years. You're like, okay. And you go back and you tell your client, they're offering 5 years. The client says, no, I want 2. So you go back and, well, you do 2. Sometimes they agree to come down. Sometimes they don't. And then you say, oh, okay, well, everybody thinks this is a good deal. And now we go to the judge. Then the judge can choose to accept that, or the judge can say, I'm not following that plea. And then y'all start all over.
Oh, okay, so they can still go back and be like, well, then I want trial
Right.
instead. Then okay.
And some
gotcha.
people even switch their minds right when we're standing there in front of the judge. I decided I want a trial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go ahead. You're gonna say something.
How's that process with negotiating with prosecutors? How do you get they're the ones that are offering the jail time,
Right.
So they say, okay, we're gonna offer your client 5 years. With what type of argument do you go back to them and say, no, let's do 2, let's do 1?
Just depends. I mean, a lot of times it depends on the evidence, how strong of a case you think they have.
Oh, because you don't
Um,
know that yet, right?
Well, you'll have the evidence,
Mm-hmm.
and whether you think it's a strong case, if you think a jury would give them that amount of time, if they don't have a lengthy criminal history, and you're like, oh, come on, they've only been in trouble one other time. Let's do 2 instead of 5.
Mhm.
5's kind of ridiculous. It's the first time ever being in trouble. So stuff like that is how you go back and forth.
Mm.
Sometimes I just argue just to argue with them. Well, we're not taking that.
Do you run into, like, I don't know how the circle is in like the criminal or even just the law field in general, but do you run into like the circles of, oh, I know this person, so I think,
Yeah.
they'll work with me. That you have
You
that,
do.
yeah.
You especially the prosecution side, the defense attorneys get to know which prosecutors are tougher
Mm.
and which ones are more lax.
So you kind of negotiate it that way, what they like and what they don't like. Yeah. That's so funny. Do you think plea deal is more so there for like expense wise, so they don't want to use up resources
Probably.
for like the time and everything that's spent
Yeah.
on trial? Yeah. Because I don't know. I mean, I would listen to the plea deal.
I'd give you a
Let's see.
plea.
Of what, 1 year, 6 months? But then again, even if you do take the plea deal and they'll give you like 5 years, a lot of the times, if it's like a lesser charge,
It'll get
you may
reduced,
be,
let
yeah,
off for
you
good
may be
behavior.
let off.
Well, you can
before
get
that.
parole. Say they send you to prison for 10 years and you do everything you're supposed to do in prison, then you can get out of prison early on parole.
Yeah. So it's still even a gamble at that point too.
Well,
Or they can-
do the crime, do the time. Am I right?
I always tell people whatever you plead to, that's what you expect to do. So if you accept 5 years, expect to do day for day because parole's not a guarantee.
Right.
So expect to do 5 years day for day.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Right.
On that note,
Yeah. Good discussion again. I love
yes,
these.
It's always fun talking about these cases. You
Yeah.
see, like, because not only do you have experience in criminal defense, but you also have some prosecution experience. So it's cool to see like both sides of things. And yeah, anybody who's in need of a criminal lawyer, Haley's your person
Haley's
because
the
she's got
one.
experience in both
What is
aspects.
it? What's the dismissal rate? 85%? 80%? 80% dismissal rate was what Haley has.
Oh.
We got the stats.
Probably Haley didn't even know. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
okay.
she just- She just goes in there and does what she does.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for watching, and then we'll see you next time. Bye, guys. Thank you for watching another episode of Legal Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode, you can always give our office a call to schedule your free 30-minute consultation with one of our team members. Check the description below and give us a call today.